So we're going to try, you guys, to always start right promptly at 8:30 so that there's enough time to cover our topics. Tonight we have such a big treat for all of you. I'm so excited. I've asked Jenn Borzio to join us to talk to all of you about connecting and closing. I asked Jenn to present on this topic because she really is a master closer and presenter. She connects with people so easily and purposefully, and she closes readily. And here are a few stats about Jenn. She's a mom of 3 very active, very adorable children, and a loving wife to the super fun Angelo. As many of you have met him, he's always smiling. Jenn has always been deeply committed to fitness and nutrition. In fact, she was a personal trainer and minored in nutrition in college. I personally have had the pleasure of knowing Jenn for a long time. We used to call her the swim whisperer because she could get any fearful young child into a pool, including Taylor. Though I've known her for years, she was not really open to isogenics because she believed she was doing everything she needed nutritionally and she had the right plan financially. But then one year, we went out to take a walk together and we started to talk a little bit in more detail about isogenics, and she got started. And she started with isogenics, and after consuming the products, she became a believer. So much so that now she feels absolutely compelled to share it with others. And share she does. Jenn has a heart of service, and when she shares, and she does share all the time with people, and her closing rate is just so incredibly impressive. She launched her business by doing her first 30-day system with a big group of family and friends as a New Year's reset. That was in January of 2016. And since then, in 20 months, Jenn has personally enrolled over 212 people, and she's helped scores of others throughout her team and create enrollments as well. So if you average that out on a consistent basis, she's enrolling about 12 people every month. I mean, that's amazing. And consistently, 212 people in 18 months. She knows how to connect, how to reach people, and how to close. So I wanted Jenn to share her tips with you tonight. Any questions that you have, when we post the recording, list the questions in the comments underneath, and Jenn will be sure to get back to you with an answer. I think it's going to be such great training. You guys take your pen and paper out, and I'm going to turn it over to Jenn. And thank you so much, Jenn, for being a trainer on our call tonight. We super appreciate you and love you so much.
Aww. Thank you for the nice introduction. I love you guys too, and I'm so excited to be here. I appreciate you asking me to do this. Honestly, like Lynn said, I mean, she talked to me for quite a while about isogenics, and I was just like, I'm good. I feel like I know what I'm doing. I was feeling pretty good, and didn't really feel like I was needing things like some people do that we talk to. And finally, I'm like, all right, I'll just do it, like not thinking it would turn into what it did. But I think like so many of us know, you meet people and they think they know everything, or they just are skeptical because there is a lot of garbage out there. But I did do some research and ended up, as Lynn said, I started off with a group of 17 people, and our group lost 230 pounds in a month. So needless to say, I was super impressed. My mother-in-law's lost over 80 pounds. So there's making those personal observations of people that I know and love really changing and transforming was pretty awesome. So it, needless to say, made me a believer pretty quickly. And I feel like when I believe in something, it is easy to talk about. One of the biggest pieces of advice I can give is not to be weird, because people sense that and feel that, and then they back off. I don't think that isogenics is for every single person out there. I try not to shove it down people's throats, but more so talk about it with just experience and the belief that I have. And I always bring up the point that, like, I feel like I know a lot about nutrition, and I ate well most of the time, and that I thought it was enough, but that I understand more now in looking at our food supply and what it lacks, that when you diet, you're depleting your body of nutrients when we're already depleted, even if you eat perfectly. And I also say to people, you probably have to eat 20 pounds worth of food to get all the nutrients that you do in a shake. And who can do that without getting thousands of calories? It's not realistic. So the idea is, I always bring up, you get a lot of nutrients in a small amount of calories, and it's made of just food. People are scared of chemicals and and all sorts of things that are in other products out there. And as Lynn advised me from the start, I never put down another company. A lot of people will question those things because they're looking at, they're bombarded like we are every day. You turn on the TV, there's commercials for losing weight. You drive down the road, there's billboards, there's radio commercials, people, trying to sell you things. And so of course people are going to be fearful and think, oh, you're just doing this to make money. So I think if you come at it, and I always ask the person when I talk, first of all, I try not to talk too much at first. That quick story is a great thing to practice because it is easy to ramble on and talk about what it's done for you and your husband or your wife and your friend. And that can be a little much for people sometimes. So I try to keep it short. I tell about how I started and what I felt before and what I saw with our group and then what I've seen with other people. And I do bring up the point. And obviously all of you are going to have different backgrounds. I was a teacher, became a guidance counselor, minored in nutrition, was a personal trainer. So I interject those things. But even if you don't have a background in nutrition or training and your story is different, you can always say, well, a friend of mine who was a trainer, and kind of use their story. Like, she saw that no matter how hard she worked with people hours on end, like they could only get so far because 80% of what you're going to look like comes from nutrition. You could spend hours in the gym and I was one of them and just stay the same. And you might look great, but you never can get that to that next step, So it doesn't have to be that you don't feel like you have to be an expert in nutrition to talk about it or like a competitor of some sport. I also think it's important so after I kind of give my story, I always say to them, what is your goal? Tell me what you're looking to accomplish. And I mean, rarely I'll have somebody who doesn't know what to say. People want to talk about themselves and they want to share with you where they're struggling. As a guidance counselor, I deal with people all the time telling me their problems. And it's hard to find somebody who won't open up to you about something that they are unhappy about in their life. So you might hear they're stressed, like they're working and I talked to a single mom today, not about isogenics, but her son's really sick and she's having to take off work to run him to appointments and she's, in school. So I'm just thinking like, how does she manage all this, and who can't benefit from having some stress relief in a natural way? So then that right away, sets off like inside of me, okay, stress is something I should focus on with someone like that. Or somebody else might say, I have trouble just walking through the grocery store. I get out of breath because I have 100 pounds to lose. So then obviously you're going to focus in on weight loss. Somebody else I work with some people who do CrossFit. What I'm talking about with them is going to be completely different. And I'll share stories with them on athletes and how it's improved their performance. And then I might interject. I did a half marathon last year. So then I'll talk about how I ended, what my ending time was with the littlest training I've ever done, but with isogenics performance, and compare that to the other ones I've done prior to isogenics. So you have to meet the person where they are. And I think that that's really important to keep in mind. Like, don't talk about performance line to somebody who wants to lose 100 pounds. It just doesn't make sense. So you have to listen and be in tune. I talked to a guy today who is a father of 3. He works and coaches and does all sorts of things. He's crazy busy. And he was saying to me, I said, what are the biggest struggles that you have? And he said, like snacking on things when I make food for my kids, like their lunches, or like if I'm getting them dessert. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally know what you mean. And I do. Like, I can relate to that. And even if you're not a mom or a dad and somebody says something like that, you could kind of imagine, if you're dishing stuff out for other people, it's tempting to grab it. So, and those are the things I take notes on. Like, every person I talk to, I start a piece of paper on, and eventually if they end up enrolling, like I have a folder where I keep all their information, and it's so helpful and it means a lot to them when you are speaking to be able to go back and reference that. Like, oh, he told me his goal was to lose 40 pounds. Let me write that down. He told me he has 3 kids that are 13, 11, and 8 and are super busy in sports. You don't have to write down their life story, but then they know that you're listening, and people appreciate that. And it helps make a connection. I think so much about this is making connections with people, because they don't want to be just called up and say, you want to hear about isogenics? Because that's getting weird. And then people shy away, and then, they don't want to talk to you, and they're turned off. So I think you need to think about, like connecting, seeing where they're at, and then kind of honing in on whatever it is that that is what they're trying to achieve. Another thing I want to mention is it's easier to wake up every day and not to do this. It's easier, right? Like all of us could just wake up and do the millions of things that we have to do in our busy lives. But when you think about it, it's not that difficult to do it. So you have to really be intentional and set a goal on what you're going to do. And for example, talking to like 2 people a day about it is something that is a good rule of thumb. Whether you contact them on Facebook, whether you send out a text to an old friend, and say, I was thinking of you, I have this awesome system that I use and I'd love to tell you about it. I'd love to catch up over coffee or maybe meet and go for a walk as Lynn and I did. It kind of depends on the person, I think, and what their lifestyle is like, what you would invite them to do. And they might say no. I know there's a statistic out there of how many no's you get before you do get a yes. So you can't take it personal. And it's easy to do that, and I've been there too, where I'm like, oh geez, like I feel like, I don't know, I just got shot down. And like, if you let that get to you and then give up, you'll never get anywhere. So I think that you have to wake up every day and be intentional. Consistency is key. You hear that from a lot of different trainings, and I am a believer in it. Again, it's easier to wake up and not do a post on Facebook. It's easier not to go back and comment on those posts throughout the day. It certainly is, it's you have to keep it in your mind that you're going to do this and not just do it in the summer when you have more time, or not just do it right after the holidays when people are looking. Because as you hear over and over, and I've heard this hundreds of times from people, they're watching whether you realize they're watching or not. And I can't tell you how many people, and Sonia's on this call, her and her husband have had phenomenal results. They look like different people. They look like they're 20 years younger. And Mike watched me, her husband was my swim coach, watched me for an entire year doing this and talked to me about it and saw me swimming in the pool. And he's like, what are you doing? You're looking leaner. And I would tell him about it, not push it on him. And he's like, all right, I think I might be ready. And January 15th of this last year, he called me and said, I'm tired of being fat and tired, and I'm going to do this. And he blew it out of the water. I mean, they lost over 100 pounds in a few months, and their whole life has changed. So like those stories I share with people. But again, it was the consistency. If I don't have reminders on Facebook, people aren't going to come out and seek me out. Like they have too many other distractions in their life. So being intentional. And then also for yourself, remember why you're doing this. And, it might be like you of course you want to help people, and that should always be the key. But people also want to earn money, right? Like we don't just spend our time doing all of this for the heck of it. So remembering, do you want to maybe go on a vacation? Do you want to leave your job? Do you want to retire? And kind of making those lists and having those reminders. Because I think we do all go through cycles, and I've been there myself where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't squeeze one more thing in my day. But then all of a sudden, like people I talked to 6 months ago might reach out to me. And they're like, I've been watching you for the last 6 months. Like, I love all your posts, but they haven't said a word. So you just don't know ever who's watching and who's not. And I think if you offer value is one of the biggest pieces of advice that people have given me that I think of every time I post on social media. Don't complain. Obviously, we complain a little bit here and there, but if you're somebody that's negative all the time on social media, who wants to hear that? We have so much of that when you turn on the news, when you go out in the world, that you try to keep it positive. And if somebody's going to offer me a recipe, if somebody's going to tell me about prepping meals, I want to listen to that. I don't want to hear about or fitness tips. I want to hear those things. I don't want to hear about nonsense, or somebody who's just miserable all the time and venting like every time they're on there about how much they hate this and hate that. So being positive, interjecting your regular life into Isogenics things as well, so you don't just look like you're like a salesperson for the company and that you have no other life. You have to, I think, try to show your full self. And again, like explaining that this is your passion and why you want to share it. I always say to people, like, I didn't originally think I'd be wanting to talk about it, but when you see it consistently working and you have the thank yous that you get, it's very rewarding, and it makes you want to share more, I find. And again, most people are going to say no initially, and I think that you can't overthink that. It might not be the right time in their life. So try to meet them where they are. And if you reach out to them and they say, I'll get back to you, and they don't, what do you think you should do? Just let it go? Or do you think maybe you should in a few days say, oh, did you get a chance to watch those videos I sent you? Or did you get a chance to look around Ultimate Health Quests? Those kinds of things, and see what they write back. If they just completely ignore you, that might happen, and you might want to try again in a few months. But if you don't have some sort of system of organization, you're never going to remember who you reached out to and who you didn't. So one big piece of advice I can give you is just making a list. And we've all probably heard about like who you know and making that list. And I know with Sonia, I've talked to her about like, have your grouping of swim moms, have your grouping of friends, have your grouping of realtors, because you have different the groups of people in your life, and a lot of times you can reach them in an easier way if you get all of them together, and it's like a group of moms, for example. And those are more intentional things. Like, again, it's not that hard to do a home party. It's not that hard to put up a Facebook post, but is it easier not to? Of course. So I think you really have to make that decision. This is what I'm going to do. It might be hard some days. It might, other days might seem like, wow, there's lots of people reaching out. I'm getting a lot of positives. So you have to know that it works in cycles, like so many things do in life, and not take things personal. And always check back in and let people know when you start new challenges. For example, the 16-week challenge we're doing on Ultimate Health Quest. I had a guy that I'd been connecting with on LinkedIn for, probably 6 months. And he'll say, I'm ready, I'm not ready, I'm ready, I'm not ready. And today, or it was yesterday, I think I said, I just thought of you because we're starting a 16-week challenge in our group. I just figured I'd see if this might be a good time. We're going to have some, health tips on there, and you have the group support. You can also get this product credit. And I thought of you, and I did. I truly did think of him. But also there's other people I didn't think of that if I went back and looked at, my list and saw that 3 months ago I reached out to them and haven't heard anything, that's another person I'm going to send a text to. And you have to be efficient with your time, because we all only have so much time in a day, and you want to make use of it and not feel like you're wasting it. So doing things like having emails or texts that you copy and paste and tweaking it a bit for each person to personalize it makes a big difference. And another thing is and I may have kind of mentioned this already, but it's not about you, it's about them. And they will sense that. If you go on and on and on about yourself, they're going to be like, all right, like, why is this person calling me to try to get me to do something if they just want to talk about them? So that is key. And I can't stress that enough, that go with, like, as Lynn always says, that heart of service and thinking like, what does this person need in their life? And how can Isagenix help that? My husband made a really good point yesterday. We were driving on the street, and there was a guy that was pretty heavy running, and he looked like it was a struggle for him. And he was saying, you see people struggling so hard, trying to work out, trying to lose weight, and nothing's happening. And I think to myself, like, gosh, there's such an easier way. Like, I just want to tell him about it. And I said, yeah, well, that's what you do. Like, that's why we talk about it with people, because he's like, I know that guy could be helped. I know he could lose weight and start to feel better, and then he'd run faster and not look like he's struggling so much. There's so many people that don't know about it, though. And I do find, just like that car you never heard of, and then you're driving down the road and you see it everywhere, I do find that I see Isagenix even when we're in other countries or on vacation in different places, that there's way more people doing it than I realized. But think of all the people that are not doing it. In one training I was at, they were saying, like, look in your neighborhood. Have you talked to those people about it? And of course, you don't want to go knocking door to door, but somehow in conversation, it will probably come up, like what it is that they're missing. So I think relating to them and trying to see, what it is that they might need help with is key. So I'm going to stop for a minute. I know we only have 10 minutes left. If people have questions, or there's anything you want me to clarify, I know a lot of times when I'm listening to trainings that it helps me to jot things down. And then if people have questions, please feel free to ask. I certainly have a lot I can learn as well, but I'm happy to share and answer questions if anybody.
You guys. Again, please be aware of your background noise. I'm not going to unmute you. Somebody has noise going on in their background right now. If you just raise your hand, we'll just unmute you so you can ask a question. Jenn's really good at closing, so maybe you want to ask her questions like, when does she introduce it in the conversation? How does she get back to people? Anything that you want to ask her, we'll look around and see. I think I see a hand here. So. Lisa, did you have a question? Go ahead, Lisa. Lisa, did you have a question? Okay, maybe not. Okay, she's giving up. All right, does anyone have a question that you'd like to ask her? Okay, then I'm going to ask. And then if you think of questions, just jump in and ask questions. Just raise your hand and we'll make sure.
I could ask a question.
Oh, go ahead, Taylor.
So, Jen, I was wondering if you talk a little bit about when you're in a conversation, right? You've obviously connected with the person in order to get the conversation going. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about when you sense that there's a point in their life where they could use Isagenix or where Isagenix would be helpful, how you begin to shift the conversation if you want to talk about it. I know that you don't talk about it in every conversation, but I was just wondering when you decide you do, how you shift the conversation a little bit.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a really good question. And that's sometimes is easier than other times, honestly. So I'll just start with an example because I think that would be easier. I was talking to somebody the other day that sees me run on my lunch break, and she was like, oh, I don't know how you do it. Like, I just have nothing in me to do that. I can barely walk. Like I have no desire. And I'm like, I've seen people in that same position. And like, I know what you mean. Like I've seen people that it's a struggle for them to get out of their car and walk to work. For her, it was really easy because I just said like, there's such a simple way, so what if I told you that there was a solution for that really could help you? And the best part of it is that I've done it and that I've seen other people work for other people and that it's not, there's living proof. And I think people always feel that like that kind of, they believe it more if it's a person they knew that did it versus just some ad. And another example, maybe if I'm talking to like a mom at a field hockey game, like I was this last weekend, and they're telling me they're like have no time for themselves. And I hear that all the time from moms. I'm running from this to that. And I say, I know what you mean. And I'm never somebody who wanted to stop and grab fast food or go to a vending machine. And then I say, it's been awesome because I found this great system that I have bars on hand. I have shakes on hand. I don't need refrigeration. I keep them in my purse. I keep them at work. I keep them in my car. If you ever want to try some, I'd be happy to give them to you. Like, I get what you mean, so it all depends on the person, how you sort of segue into it. But I think it really just, it depends. It depends on what the conversation is, how I work that in. I think you have to see what their need is and then go with that angle. If there's somebody who's running and they can't get any faster, then I might, interject it that way. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so it's basically a skill. You kind of know how to do it in a conversation. That's kind of a skill you develop as you go along, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it, like everything else, if you want to be a good athlete, what do you need to do? You need to practice. So you get uncomfortable, and you have to like get in your head that it's going to feel uncomfortable. Just like doing Facebook Live. I was scared to death the first time I did it. I felt like shaky and had everything scripted. And now I don't feel that way. Yeah, I still get a little nervous, but the only way to get better is to make the mistakes and learn and be shot down and feel awkward and feel uncomfortable. Go back and take notes on it and do it better the next time. It's the only way with anything in life that you're going to get better is just to do it. You can talk about it, think about it, but until you actually practice it, it's not going to, it's not going to make a difference.
Perfect. Thanks, Jen.
And I think the more you talk about it and think about it and not do it, the bigger it becomes and the harder it becomes.
Yeah. Because oftentimes in life, how often do you stress and worry about something? I say this to students all the time. And then it happens and you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. It wasn't that big of a deal. But in your head, you've made it way bigger than really it needs to be. And I'm guilty of it too. I do it with so many things in my life. And then I'm like, why did I worry like that? Mm-hmm. So it's true. It's easy to say, but to do is not always the case. So you just got to rip off that Band-Aid and try it and then learn.
So Jen, I also noticed, 212 enrollments in a short period of time. It's a very impressive number. And so I'm just wondering, do you watch your stats to see how many are coming from Facebook connections? How many are coming from one-on-one connections? Do you find that there's a better resource pool for your connections? Is it just everyone all the time, always in the forefront of your mind? How are you connecting with people?
In the beginning, it was more like really intentionally reaching out to my list of people. But obviously, so many people, right? And you're going to continue to meet new people. But then once you've talked with those people, yes, you'll go back and check in and do those sort of things. But Facebook, you just reach so many more people in a short amount of time, especially when you go live, because that alert comes up that so-and-so is live. And even if you're not friends with them, people watch those things. And I'm amazed at how many people have actually reached out that I don't know. I didn't think that would happen. I guess because I thought I wouldn't do that, other people wouldn't. But again, everybody's different. You can't assume. So I have found that makes the best use of my time, and that I'm reaching new people who then have new groups of people that they might do, and then oftentimes too, I think when people have a good experience, they end up having friends that then, they want to do it. And it really does naturally, as Lynn says, like organically spread, because people have good results. They feel good, they look good, and they, then people notice, it does happen, but it won't always happen when you think it's going to. You might think, what is everybody said it's going to do? They're just going to come to me. But it takes time and consistency, and it's not in the beginning. I feel like it takes many, many months of that for that to occur.
And especially with Facebook, you just have to stay the course.
Yeah.
Conversation, you just post all the time, right?
Yeah.
And you blend it with family and your message.
Yeah, absolutely. It has to be a good mixture. Otherwise, people are going to get like, this is too much, Like I try to only stick with one before and after picture per week. Once in a while, I'll throw in a second one, but they need to see that you have a life outside of Isogenics.
Excellent. So, Jen, we have about 3 minutes left, and we want to give everybody a chance to jump onto ISO Warrior Challenge. Is there any other closing advice or last-minute thoughts you have for everyone? A particular tip that you follow when you're closing with someone?
Just showing your excitement and being authentic, I think, is key, and saying like, it was so great talking with you today. Totally understand that you want time to think about it. I was the same way, and letting them know and remembering how it was for you when you first heard about it, because we were all there at some point. We were all skeptics at some point, right? Like most people don't just jump on and say, yep, you just told me about it, let me sign up. Like it's rare that happens. So remembering what it's like to be in that position, and remembering that they're a person who, they're spending money, they're putting things in their body, so they're going to want some time. So, respecting that and saying that to them, I think makes them feel like kind of at ease, like you're not going to be like a hawk on top of them trying to go after them. So yeah, I think that's something to remember and always close with before you then follow up in a few days or a week.
And do you set a follow-up, or do you just make that organic when you follow up?
It depends on the person. Sometimes I'll say, is it okay if I check back with you in 3 days? Other times I just put an alert in my phone and I just do it. So it kind of depends how the conversation's ending.
And is follow-up typically you text, make an appointment first? Is it just a phone call? How do you typically follow up?
I usually text the person. I just find a lot of people can't always answer the phone if they're at work or with their kids. So I'll text and say, is there a good time for you to talk today? After 6, that we could follow up on our last conversation. That way it gives them the opportunity to give you like a window that works for them, and then we pick a time. But if you don't pick a time, then you're calling, then they're calling you back. So it is good if you can get them to commit to a time. If you give them a window for you and then they pick a time within that, I think that's helpful.
Excellent. And, last thing, you mentioned that you use the contests and promotions as a way to close people. And like our 16-week challenge. I think using our Zoom calls where there's free membership on Wednesday nights.
Yes.
I found that to be extremely effective.
Yes. I agree. And I think the ones that I've been on, I learned new things every time. And I think they orchestrate them very well. And it's a good amount of information in 25 minutes. They're not this lengthy thing that people don't have the time to listen to. And then you get something out of it at the end. So yeah, I do find that people like that. People always like coupons and savings, and so that's a good way to segue them into.
Thank you, Jen. It's 9:00, so I'm going to say thank you quickly.
Okay.
Wonderful training tonight. We super appreciate it. And anyone who has questions, things that you think of afterwards that you would have loved to have asked Jen, She's great, as you can tell, answers very thoroughly. Just put the questions in the comment below the recording when we post it.
I'll put it up tomorrow.
And Jen will get back to everyone. We'll make sure your questions are answered. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Jen.
much, Jen. You were wonderful.
welcome.
Appreciate you.
Night, everybody.
Thanks.